Yeah.
People are people. That's man's decision. It wasn't the religion that guided man to implement that as a weapon against fellow man.
Yeah. And not only that, Graham, right?
Yes.
The Soviet Union, they didn't have religion.
Correct.
But they were the most violent
but
state.
Orthodox, very small Orthodox church, I believe, within Russia,
Yeah. So overall, whether it's Chairman Mao, current liberal order, human beings commit violence.
Yeah.
So it's not that you can always just say it's because of God or religion. But going back to God, so are you aware of what Muslims believe about Jesus when it comes to our theological sort of difference?
Well, God did not have, according to Islam, God did not have a son. That's the Prophet Muhammad. Yeah.
So, one of the things the Quran emphasizes is that it's a continuation of the old messages. So we have, all the old prophets. We have Abraham and Noah and Moses and Jesus and so on, Joseph and so on and so forth. And they all came with the one very simple message, which is none is worthy of worship except God. So the fundamental message of Islam is not difficult to understand.
Well, because in Islam you're not following a human being, this is the difference between Christianity and Islam. Correct me if I'm wrong here.
Yeah.
Islam is about God. God is the sole belief, right? Whereas in Christianity, you have Jesus as the Son of God rather than a prophet.
So, about the Son of God, do you believe him to be a metaphorical son or like a literal Son of God?
Oh, that's open to interpretation, yeah. Now, do I believe there was a Jesus as a human being?
A historical person?
Yeah.
Of course.
Yes, of course I do, yeah. Was he the Son of God? Well, if you're to believe what was written in the texts, then certainly there had to be something there.
So, when it comes to God, God doesn't need to eat or drink or, do any of those things. And when we look at Jesus or his mother Mary, they slept because they were tired, they ate, they drank. And Jesus himself always said to worship God. So in the Quran, you said you read it.
Quite some time ago. I don't profess to know.
Yeah, no, of course. And obviously, when you're reading, because sometimes certain points aren't emphasized. But one of the things it mentions in the Quran again and again is that rationally, Jesus cannot be God because God is all-powerful and free of need. But Jesus had limitations, right? Yeah. And also that Jesus said to worship God, and that was his thing. Even historically, what's interesting is that there were early Christian sects that believed what I believe. They believed that Jesus was not God, not the Son of God, and that he was a messenger of God. Yeah. There's actually a very interesting talk online by a academic called Dr. Gerald Dirks, and he has this talk on Islamic trajectories in early Christianity. And what he does is he historically looks at it and he shows that what Muslims believe today about Jesus was believed by certain Christians in the past. So it's not like all Christians believed he was God and then Muslims came 600 years later and said, no, he's not. So the fundamental thing in Islam is that to have salvation, you have to have the correct theology. It's not enough to, to be a good person in terms of your manners or how you are, but your theology about God, we shouldn't say God has a son. I mean, did you ever think about this as you're reading the Quran?
To be honest and to be fair, I try not to compare the two. When I did read the Quran, I tried not to compare it to outside religion. Right. I try to absorb the message in the Quran for what it is, rather than do a comparison.
Okay. But don't you think, Graham, that if you, for example, if you pass away and you go to God, and God could ask you that, you came across other philosophies, religions, and I gave you a mind. I gave you a rational mind.
You made the wrong choice.
Yeah, I think God will say, I gave you a gift of this amazing biological system, which can help us come to truth, because God wouldn't want us to blindly follow any religion. If we cross the road, we're going to use our mind. Thank you. Would you have some water?
I'm good, my friend.
Are you sure?
Thank you. Yes, I'm
Okay.
Well,
So,
there's-
yeah, thank you very much. So, God wants us to be rational.
Yep.
And the thing about Jesus being God is that it's not something that you can rationally justify, which is why early Christian theologians, they stopped trying to rationalize it because it was very hard for them to do.
Yeah.
But the Quran tells you something which Abraham, Moses, Noah, they all said, which is there's only one God. And the idea of a man being God, Jesus being God, this is even alien to the chronology throughout history of God sending messengers, you know?
Sorry, is that your major point?
Yeah, I mean, the point I was trying to make is basically that all throughout history you have the same message from God, you know, to the Israelites, to the people of Noah, to the people during the time of Adam, the people after him. And then with Jesus, we have a message with what today's Christians say, something which is totally alien to the past. But if we look at it in this order, that we have Noah saying one God, worship him alone. God doesn't have a son. You know.
This is Old Testament with Noah, and the New Testament it's Jesus' working words. There's a difference there. Yeah, you have the Old Testament and the New Testament now. What I did notice is the Christian Bible, the New Testament, and the Word in the Quran are very, very similar.
Right.
The messages within it and the stories within it are very, very similar indeed. A lot of folk maybe don't realise that. But it's like the character of God is God, Muhammad is Muhammad, Jesus is Jesus, but they're very similar in their messages. Both Jesus, Muhammad, and God, of course.
Yeah.
Very similar indeed.
Yeah. And with this similarity, the thing that we'll notice is that when it says in the Quran or the Bible that Jesus raised the dead, Jesus made the blind see, he healed the leper.
Now, that could be interpreted in the physical sense, or theoretically, or not theoretically, but in a spiritual sense, the blind not being able to see. I mean, people walk around with two very good eyes in their head, but they're still blind. If you see it from that aspect.
That can be there. However, what we do know is that Jesus did miracles from the historical perspective. So obviously, like Moses parted the sea. So we have these physical miracles. Now the Quran makes one addition to these miracles. It says, by God's permission. So Jesus raised the dead by God's permission. Jesus healed the leper by God's permission. So that's the emphasis in Islam, that don't take him beyond a man. You know, don't go beyond that. Because at the end of the day, I want you to go to paradise. I want to go to paradise. I want everyone to go to paradise. And the message it says in the Quran is that if you believe Jesus to be divine, to be the Son of God, this is blasphemy, and that the Quran says those people won't go to paradise. Which is why what we try and do is we try and give the message of Islam, and even though it's uncomfortable sometimes to talk to a person of the opposite faith and say, your theology is incorrect. It's a very uncomfortable conversation. But ultimately it's our duty to convey that.
But the thing is, if you're a true believer in your religion, you should be open to other people's interpretation of their faith system.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's part and parcel of being a human being, humanity and your faith and the word of God indeed. And you have to be open to other people's interpretation and belief systems.
Yeah.
Because we weren't all born the same, we weren't all made the same.
Yeah.
So you should be able to converse and argue, but discuss your point with your fellow man.
Yeah. And even if we disagree, we can at least convey to each other's things. I actually have a booklet in my jacket. If you don't mind, I can give it to you. Love of God. Yeah. I'll just, if you just come over. So, this is the first thing about love of God. So this is just about I mean, one way of putting it is, if you have a really heavy meal, you come from home, you have a heavy meal, and someone comes and offers you some food, water, whatever, you're like, I don't need anything, I'm full.
I understand the analogy.
Yeah. So when we're filled with the love of God, we don't need validation from people. We don't need anything else, right? I mean, if we walk down this Park Lane, all we see is competition. You know, people are trying to compete each other with wealth and how they look, and true peace comes when we have love of God in our hearts. So this is a very good booklet for that. And I want to give you a copy of the Quran.
Do you know, I have one of these already.
Oh, you have it? Okay.
It's at home, and I'm not at home at present.
Excellent.
So it's Sunday, and not necessarily for the Quran, but I like to dedicate my Sundays to religion. So that's going to be a good reading for tonight.
Okay, good. I'll explain to you where you could begin. So the Quran is broken into these chapters, and there's actually, trying to find which would be, so this is chapter 3, and this is page 45, Al Imran. So the family of Imran. So read that chapter.
I will.
It'll go over what we believe about Jesus. And you know, just, I mean, I'm trying to explain to the best of my ability what we believe and why we believe, but there's nothing better than reading it for yourself and thinking about it. Yeah. And at the back of this material, there's an email address. So if you go to this website, you can email, and it actually comes through to our organization. We could speak to you. So it's really nice speaking to you, Graham.
Lovely speaking to you, brother.
Have a lovely day.
You too, my friend.
Thank you so much.
God bless.
Thank you. Salam, brother. How you doing? You okay? You good? Okay, sorry. Thank you, brother. That was a very good conversation. Whose is that?
This one. You recording as well?
He's a very nice guy. Pleasant conversation with pleasant question. You see, people like this, we will only win them over through manners. So he's polite, nice, kind. I was talking to Tony. Which Tony? Oh, yeah, how much was it? Huh? He said he's going to come back. Because he and him are really going over this. So why don't we do it together? What do you propose? No, it's this idea. I don't know anything about that.